If you feel like you are constantly busy but never truly productive, you may be falling for one of the most common time management myths. But don't worry, in this week's episode, we're busting these big misconceptions and sharing actionable strategies to take back control of your schedule. My name is Laura Davis. I am a time management strategist, and I work with corporate and entrepreneurial moms to ditch the hot mess and level up your work-life balance using a proven time management framework. So let's dig into today's episode. Now, if you have ever felt like no matter how hard you work, you're still drowning in tasks and never getting ahead, you are not alone, my friend. I have been there, and today we're going to break down the biggest time management myths that are actually holding you back and doing more damage to you than good. But more importantly, I will also show you what to do instead so that you can start feeling in control of your time, your energy, and your life. Now, if this is already resonating with you and you want a quick way to improve your time management skills, the Master Your Workweek Challenge is your best next step. Over 100 women have already taken this free 5-day challenge over the last year and walked away with real strategies that they could implement immediately to start truly checking things off of their to-do list and making their work week feel easier and less chaotic. You can sign up at thelauraddavis.com/workweek. All right, let's get into this week's episode. So I want to start with one of the biggest myths out there, and that is that multitasking makes you more productive. The truth is that research shows that multitasking actually reduces your productivity by up to 40%. 40 freaking percent. That is insane. And that's because your brain is constantly switching between tasks instead of focusing on one thing at a time. And I know that we can probably all relate to this somehow, where I immediately go to when I'm walking around the house and I'm like, oh, I need to do the dishes really quick. And then I go to put a cup away and I'm like, oh, wait, I need to start dinner really quick. Let me grab something out of the fridge. And then the fridge leads me to putting something back into the laundry room, which leads me to getting something out of Harper's room, which leads me to my bathroom, which leads me back out to the kitchen. And I can't remember what I started off doing. So multitasking really does more harm than good to your productivity, and that focus is super important. And again, this can also be because you are doing two high brain power activities at the same time instead of pairing a low brain power activity with a high brain power activity. Now, studies from Stanford University confirm that multitasking leads to more mistakes and higher stress levels. So if you are constantly jumping from task to task or project to project or, chore to chore, you're not actually getting more done. You're just exhausting your brain because you're not allowing it to catch up to yourself, to catch up to what you're doing. So another thing to think about is top performers in any industry. Okay, so we're thinking elite athletes, CEOs, high achievers. They don't multitask, they focus. If you want to operate at your absolute highest level, it is time to ditch the multitasking. A really good example of this when I'm talking to clients is I like to use Simone Biles as an example. Now, she is a gymnast. Obviously, she's a gold medal Olympian who does a lot of different parts of gymnastics. Now, I'm not a gymnastics expert. However, even though she does multiple different parts of gymnastics, when she is practicing her floor routine, she's not thinking about her vault routine. She is totally focused on that floor routine. And the same thing when she's practicing her vault routine. She's not thinking about her floor routine. She is 100% focused on what she is doing at that moment. So imagine how much clearer and more at peace your day would feel if you weren't constantly trying to juggle 5 things at one time, because you deserve a workflow and focus that actually serves you. Now, if I'm being totally honest with you, I used to think that saying yes to everything and doing multiple things at once made me a good team player, right? Nobody wants to be a bad teammate, whether that's in your marriage, in parenthood, in your corporate job or even in your business, if you have a team, nobody wants to be a bad teammate. Everyone wants to be a team player. But in reality, saying yes to everything just left me drained, resentful, and feeling disconnected. And so, just know that if that's you, if you've been there before, you are definitely not the only one. That is really common. We don't want to sound or feel like we're being a bad teammate, right? So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but instead of pairing a high brain power activity with another high brain power activity, try pairing high and low brain power activities together. A great example of this is listening to a podcast or training during your commute into work. So driving is that low brain power activity. You still need to be paying attention, but you're not like trying to write something while listening to a podcast, right? I don't recommend doing that. So if there are, if you're an entrepreneur, you've probably bought all of these courses and there are probably 10 of them sitting in your inbox that you haven't listened to yet. Try listening to those while you're driving into work. And that's just one example. Another example could be, I really like, so this is my version of multitasking. I really like to have impactful conversations with Harper while we're in the car also. Because again, driving is not, I'm focused on driving, but I can also have an impactful conversation, a one-on-one conversation with her, which really feeds her. Her love language is quality time. So that really feeds her love language, and I'm able to do two things at once. So that is the best way to multitask, in my opinion, is to pair a high and low brain power activity together. Now, myth number 2 is that more hours equals more activity. So this idea that if you are not working long hours or not working a ton of hours, then you're obviously not working hard enough. And just because you work more hours doesn't mean that you are producing more work that is high quality. So you may be getting things checked off of your list or producing a higher quantity of work, but the quality of the work that you're producing is likely lower if you're pushing yourself and working too much. And this is true for women who are in corporate and women who are entrepreneurial and they own their own business. And I will again be very honest with you that in the corporate world, this is something that I personally have had to overcome from the judgmental side. So I have caught myself many times saying, well, they're not producing as many things as I am. So they must not be busy enough. So they must not be working enough. And it has taken, my career in corporate is going on almost 18 years. So it has taken me almost a decade to realize that I had that judgment, mostly before I had Harper. So not to say that there's a trend there, but once I had Harper, I really became a lot more open-minded to the fact that people have different working patterns and working speeds, but the quality of work is truly what matters, not necessarily the quantity of work. So if you've been on either side of that aisle, just know that you are also not alone. I've been on both sides of the aisle for sure. So studies show that after about 50 hours of work per week, your productivity levels plateau and they may actually start to decline. So if you've ever hit that point where you're starting to stare at your screen, but nothing is getting done, this is why. You've probably hit that plateau without realizing it. And you might be thinking like, oh, I don't work over 50 hours a week. But I want to point out to you how easy it is to get to that point without realizing it. So if you skip lunch every day, that's 5 extra hours right there. So if you're working your 40-hour work week and you're skipping lunch or eating at your desk while you continue to work, you're working at least 45 hours a week. Now, also, if you do that and you're working until 5:30, or you're working on weekends, you are easily hitting 50 hours a week. Now, I will also say that if you are someone like me who is working full-time in corporate and you have a side business, you have to be even more careful, because you might not be working 50 hours a week in your corporate job, but adding on the time that you're working in your business likely is going to get you close or over that 50 hours per week of work. And so you have to be really careful to include that recharge and that recovery time so that your productivity doesn't suffer. Now, time, I will say this until, I'm blue in the face, but time is our most valuable asset, even more so than money. And not to go off on a side tangent, but you can always make more money. People can find a way to make more money. You cannot make more time. I don't like the cliche saying of everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, and I don't believe it in the way that it's intended. But the truth of the matter is that you do have 24 hours in a day. You cannot have 25, 28, 32 hours in a day. Everyone, you do have 24 hours in a day. So I truly believe that time is your most valuable asset. It is your most precious resource. The most successful people are the ones who optimize their hours, not just try to work more hours. And working smarter beats working longer every single time. And this is a really fun analogy that I thought of when I was very hungry. But would you rather have one really amazing wedding cake at your wedding that is the best tasting cake that you have ever experienced, and all of your guests leave raving about your wedding cake? Or would you rather have 10 wedding cakes that are all mediocre? None of them taste really that great. None of them have like a super strong flavor. They're just all kind of bleh. You have 10 cakes, right? Like maybe you're proud of having 10 cakes, but they're all kind of meh. But if you have one wedding cake that is phenomenal, people are going to talk about that more than the wedding where there were 10 cakes that didn't taste good. Your time should feel good for you. It should feel good for you. So it should not feel like a never ending to-do list. It should not feel like you are constantly overwhelmed and frustrated. Let's shift the way that we think about productivity to prioritizing quality over quantity. And like I said a little bit ago, I really used to think that overworking was a badge of honor, and that saying yes to everything meant that I was helping everyone and I was truly that team player that everyone wanted on their team. But I realized that I was just burning myself out. So a solution to this is to try setting boundaries around your start and stop times for work. Episode 20 on my YouTube channel, if you scroll down in the episodes, episode 20 can help with how to say no and uphold those boundaries you set for your time. So that episode goes into detail about time boundaries. I highly recommend it for you. Now, myth number 3 is that you just need the perfect planner or app on your phone to manage your time for you. This myth gets me. So I'm going to try not to go off on a tangent again, but thinking that the right planner or app or fancy tool will magically fix your time management struggles is a massive myth that we need to bust today. And I hate to break it to you, but no tool, it does not matter what planner you have. It does not matter what app you have. It does not matter if you have that fancy new skylight calendar on your wall. No tool is going to work for you if you don't have the right skills, system, and mindset first. Now, all of those things are amazing. Don't get me wrong. I am eyeing the skylight calendar for our kitchen. That is on my list. I'm going to try it out and I will let you know what I think. But an important caveat is that I have the system and the tools and the foundation in order for that tool to work correctly for me. Okay. Now, if you want real results, I want you to focus on your system first. So that means building out your time management system and then finding a tool that effectively supports that system, not the other way around. Don't buy the tool and then try to force your system to work with that tool. That's like forcing a square peg into a round hole. And I will also say that this is how most successful entrepreneurs, athletes, politicians, etc., get to the top, is they focus on mastering their skill and laying that foundation before they ever worry about incorporating specific tools. And I will also say that there are hundreds of apps. I could list a dozen of them right now. But the truth is, a tool, again, is only as good as your foundation, your system, your habits, your skills behind it. So, for example, everyone has similar tools in their kitchen, right? But not everyone is a good cook. I must have written this when I when I was hungry, because all of my analogies have been food. But think about it. We all have blenders. We all have mixers. We all have skillets. We all have pots and pans. For the most part, we all have the same level of ingredients, unless you're like an amazing private chef. But for the most part, the average person has all of the same things in their kitchen. So what makes some people really good cooks and other people, like me, not really good cooks? And it is because they practice the skill of cooking. I'm working on the cooking skill, by the way. I'm working on that. Now, I know it's tempting to want, the latest and prettiest and trendiest planner, especially with all of the ads around the end of the year that you see on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or even TV, that just tout how this new planner is going to save you and it's going to save your schedule and save your time. But trust me, truly what gives you the freedom is not the tool and how cute it looks or how color coded it is. It is the strategy behind it and the skill set that you have behind the tool that you're using. Now, I used to be a paper planner girly. Okay. I used to have so many planners and I would use them for a couple of weeks. And then inevitably, they would end up in the planner graveyard corner of my office because they weren't actually helping me manage my time. They were taking up more time than they were helping me to manage my time. And what changed for me was realizing that I didn't need more tools or different tools. I needed first to develop simple and realistic frameworks and skills to then use those tools effectively for my life. So a solution for this myth is that instead of jumping from app to app or planner to planner, start with a weekly planning session. Define your priorities and schedule based on what really moves the needle. Now, you can also check out episode 25 for an easy to follow weekly planning session. That episode on my YouTube channel, if you scroll down a little bit on the other videos, episode 25 is going to give you a really great framework for weekly planning. All right, we covered a lot today. So let's recap really quick the 3 common myths about managing your time as a working mom. So myth number 1 is that multitasking is the most productive way to work, and we busted that myth. Myth number 2 is that more hours mean more productivity. And we busted that myth as well, to work smarter, not longer hours. And then number 3 is that the next shiny planner or app is going to fix all of your time management problems. And we definitely busted that myth. Now, you can take a deeper dive on managing your time and your to-do list effectively as a working mom with my free Master Your Work Week challenge. Over 100 women have taken this challenge in the last year and walked away with real strategies that they could implement immediately to start truly checking things off of their to-do list and making their work week feel easier and less chaotic. You can sign up at theloradavis.com/workweek, and I will see you in the next episode.